It's a great honor to be here today with the youth. It's all about youth. I want to just thank the youth for teaching the Macedonian society a great lesson of democracy. It is you who started the democratic changes, the democratic processes, and it is you who will need to take over this society from generations of politicians that didn't know how to cherish youth.
Jabir already said, I think, the most important things. It was the young generation, 2014, initiating protests that eventually really changed the way civil society feels they can interact here with the government and with society in general, and how vocal they can actually be about processes. And this is something we want to, of course, support going forward as well. And that's why we organized this event. So without further ado, I would like to give the floor to Michael Roth and open up a little bit with the question, what these new developments in Macedonia that you have really followed extremely closely in the past weeks and months, of course, really have brought many hopes to the country. And I would like to ask you, what do you think is in stock for Macedonia in the next year? And what do you think this will mean for the young generation in Macedonia, but also in the region, possibly?
I don't see a bright future for your country without your engagement, without your pro-European commitment, without your creativity. And please support us. And I would like to assure you, Macedonia has many, many, many friends across Europe. And I would love to see Macedonia in the near future on my side in the Council of Ministers, because this is the key for us. Stability, peace, prosperity, democracy here in the Western Balkans without a concrete, reliable and tangible EU perspective is more or less impossible. And that's why we have to keep our promises, and Macedonia has to keep its promises. And one of the most crucial issues was the name issue. And I know there's a lot of pressure on the government, but it's not just an obligation for the government, it's also an obligation for all political actors to take responsibility for the whole country. Politics is not a game. It is too serious. And that's why I would like to encourage you to stand up, to fight for your rights, to raise your voice in order to make clear that this country believes in a bright future, in a united Europe and in NATO.
The biggest thing that I expect to change in Macedonia is the behavior and the habits and the mentality of the Macedonian people. We must admit that this change should have started yesterday. It is not too late to start today. It might be too late if we start tomorrow. It is really important to start developing a competitive spirit between the youth, to put an accent on their creativity and their competencies, and not on their membership in a certain political party in the country. And I think that this kind of atmosphere in the country will release the youth from the barriers from the past, will release the youth from the barriers that arise from the nationalism that unfortunately in the past period was boosted on a very, very high levels for different political purposes on different political parties, unfortunately. So I expect that we, as a youth generation here that made a serious change in the political atmosphere in the country, we are going to establish a new system of values where inclusion, transparency and diversity will be ordinary, normal life of the people, especially of the youth. We definitely as a youth want to move forward. the EU integration process and the path towards NATO and the agreement with Greece clearly opened the path of the youth and give hope to the youth that they need to stay here in their country, that they can find a job, develop a business here in their own country, they can form a family, a home here, and get old here in their own country, as it should be like everywhere in the world. But unfortunately, it was not the case in the past years.
What I would like to emphasize from a trade union aspect in terms of how the EU membership shall contribute to improving the opportunities of young people in the country in terms of education and employment is the following. Bearing in mind the complex economic and political position and the issues that our country is facing with, which tend to be improving in the past period, we are aware that young people in our society do not have adequate conditions for self-development that their European peers have. We are aware that people in Macedonia are faced with a huge number of issues, starting first in the education process, given the fact that we have a huge number of people who do not have access to education. Then young people are facing with issues referring to the transition from the education to the labor market, taking into account that almost half or 44.3% of the unemployed are young people, and also 56.7% of the unemployed fall into the category of long-term unemployed. And then finally, young people have issues when they enter into the labor market. They have salaries that are lower than the salaries of the other employees. Probably they will be offered employment contracts for a definite period of time. And most of them will have first employment not suitable to their education and qualification. With the integration and process, young people hope that they shall have a faster and greater access to the European educational systems, which will enable young people to be educated on a higher level, thus realistically opening the possibilities for self-development and employment and development in their own country. Also, they hope for greater opportunity for internship and practice in some of the European companies, which will gain skills and working experience that will ease the process from transition from education to work. And especially important aspect for the unions is the possibility of foreign investments that will create decent jobs with decent salaries to young people, who will be recognized eventually as highly professionals who provide highly qualified support for personal and social development. And at last, of course, we hope for easier networking with youth organizations from the European countries in order to exchange experience, opinions, and views on issues that are of interest to young people. The trade union, as an active social partner in the country and the creator of the socio-economic policies and the only organized economic power of the workers, remains on its efforts for a faster EU integration process and shall continue to work its activities supporting these processes and, of course, shall continue its fight for protection of worker rights with a special emphasis on young people.
I think what we do is essentially for the young people. When Macedonia became independent, I was 18, 19. I got my job at the Foreign Ministry at the age of 23, graduating at the Faculty of Law, not too far from here. No one then really asked me for a party membership card. We lost maybe one whole generation in the waiting room. For any foreign minister of Macedonia, the easiest thing to do was to shelve the difficult dispute we had with Greece in a drawer and leave it there. And you can, I can hit my lungs here and I can say big words against the neighbors. I can complain about how the world is so unfair and there is no justice, but you have to face reality, face problems, have the self-confidence and the courage to resolve them to the best of your ability. So we don't really have time to waste. We don't know if there will be another train, so we have to catch this one. I don't think there will be all roses. even after catching the train. There will be sweat, there will be tears, but the best chance for our country to become a European democracy with good education, with politicians that will be accountable, with media that will be free, with judges that will be independent, is to catch that train. For me, and I am almost 46, this is the last chance for my generation to give a decent start to our next one. And my daughter is here in the audience. She is turning 19 soon. And we're going to do this. We're going to do this because it's bigger than the politics of today. Our job, and my job especially as a foreign minister, is by next June to make it embarrassing for any member state of the 28 not to be supportive of the start of the accession talks for Macedonia.
I don't know if the minister remembers, but 2-3 years ago we had a debate in the law faculty in Skopje, and that's the first time we met. Yeah. Who would have thought that after 2-3 years we would be here talking about the EU accession? Definitely not me, as a skeptic. But it's a good thing that after 3 years we're here talking about the EU accession. What we have to keep in mind when we talk about the EU accession is that we cannot promise too much. The EU accession will not resolve all of the problems of youth in Macedonia, and we have to keep our homework tight and really do the job what we want to achieve. So keeping this in mind, I think first of all what the EU accession will definitely offer to us, and it's good that we have the representative of the EU accession talks leader, Bojan, to listen to this. Because the EU accession and the screening process will definitely open up the possibilities for young people to say what really is happening with the implementation of laws, what needs to be changed, and I really hope that the EU accession and the screening process will open up the groups cross-sectorial for all young people to participate, not all, but representatives of young people to participate in the working groups and to really have their perspective on the different problems that they're facing on a daily level. The second thing is that this probably will also set up what I call up until now baby steps in a real structured dialogue between young people and government representatives. Not only working groups, but real sitting down together between representatives of young people and saying what the problems are, not only regarding the EU accession, but in the daily life of young people. And this is an opportunity I think we as young people have to take and listen to and use in the right manner for the resolvement of our problems. When it comes to political participation of young people, we really have to bring back the trust of young people. So this means also demystification of public policy, and this is, when I say this, I mean when we have discussions, not to go into that the media or that the people are the judges of our system. No, the young people are here to present their problems, work on their problems, and really use this information to create better policies on the long run. And I think this is something we have to be very quick, because the referendum will be quite quickly, probably in September or October, and we really need to push young people and to give them the belief that changes are really possible and that the doors are open and that the change will not happen by night, and it will not happen if young people stay at home. They really have to go out and fight for their rights and for their problems. And I think this is something that we have to work on in the few months that we have up until the referendum to really bring back the positive side of policy and not talk only about the negative side, about partisans and being a party member and what helps you to get a job. So I think this is something we have to keep in mind, and this is the perfect opportunity to actually work really, really, really hard on that.
I simply can conclude from the beginning that youth here are becoming braver. We've had a lot of challenges. We had a lot of issues that helped youth to emancipate and to grow in sense of becoming more resilient towards the political streams that are promoting nationalism, and not just that are promoting nationalism, but they live based on fake nationalism, and they feed the young brains with stereotypes and prejudices. I'm really happy to see movements here in the region, in Macedonia especially, that helps not just the politicians, but helps fighting against these political streams that are taking us back. It's, for me, I always say patriotism, or the one that loves Macedonia, should also be aware that Macedonia should be freed from stereotypes, from prejudices, and for more, it should be freed from fear from each other. And this can come true only if they are connected, first internally, national level in Macedonia, and secondly, if they are connected in regional level. In regional level, there are a lot of experiences by youth that have also suffered, maybe even more, facing different conflict, violent conflicts.
We live in a society where youth from Macedonian, Albanian, Turkish, the Serbian or whatever, they do not talk with each other. And this is a problem that we must tackle if we want to integrate as a country inside the EU. On the other side, we have some steps that we have done in this past year when it comes to the marginalized communities, when it comes to the LGBT rights with the interparliamentary group that works on these questions, which is a very good thing, but at the same time, I think that the biggest problem and when it comes to discrimination and EU is the apathy that young people feel in this country. They are not even interested in party politics, but they're not interested even in politics itself, because they think that politics here in Macedonia is only connected with political parties. They do not see that politics is everything that we live every day, everything that we fight for clean air, for every human right or citizen's right. And at the same time, when they do want to protest about something that is discriminating them, if they even do recognize that, the problem with that part is that they are afraid that they will be branded as being part of somebody's movement, which movement is part of some political party. And that brings them into apathy, which is really, really scary for this country, especially because with 85% of all the young people that I've been working with on projects, and I'm talking on a daily basis, they just want to leave the country.
That's why we are so committed in a European future for Macedonia, because brain drain is a tragedy for you. It's good for us, because young, well-educated people are very much welcome on the German labor market. But it won't solve any problem here in your country. And stability, a clear pro-European commitment, a functioning rule of law, a modern public administration, independence of judiciary is not just a nice to have. This is the precondition for private investment, especially from smaller and medium-sized enterprises. And I was very, very happy to know, and it was the message I received from your Prime Minister, that after the agreement with Greece, 10 European companies will invest a lot of money here in Macedonia to create jobs. And that's what you really need. And believe it or not, but the European Union is first and foremost a union of common values. And these values binds everybody. And the European Union is much more than just a single market or a monetary union or just an economic project. And I know that it's extremely difficult to fulfill all the conditions. And young people are extremely impatient. They don't want to wait too long, like me. But the more engaged you continue on the reform path towards the EU, the easier and the faster it is to join the EU in the near future.
In 2011, in the summer of 2011, on the very day when the monument of Alexander the Great was erected on the square, it was horrible for me. I couldn't recognize my country and my city after a couple of years of being abroad. And at that moment, I realized that we're going in the wrong direction already. And there was a dilemma within me, as it was in many people, young people at that time. Should I stay or should I go? But I decided to stay, and I decided to fight. And that wasn't fight for a specific political cause, but it was fight for European Macedonia. It was fight for Macedonia that will be based on rule of law, on friendship, and on progress and progressive ideas. And this fight still goes on. I believe that I work still on this fight. Many of my friends and my colleagues left the country for good, and they are now working as consultants in Brussels, Belgrade, Tirana, or across Europe. And one of the main tasks of the government, and me personally working on this operative level of EU negotiations, will be to bring back some of those young professionals some of them are still young, and who can contribute a lot, and that can bring their personal cause, professional cause of bringing Macedonia into the European Union and also transforming Macedonia in a modern European country, to bring them back here and to make this fight their own fight, because many of them are enthusiastic still about their country. So this is also an open call for all the people that were born in 70s, 80s and 90s to come along, join this fight and take ownership on the fight, because this will be also a long journey, which will be a generational task for everyone, for every one of us, but will be also a national task at national level. Which brings me to the second point I wanted to make, and it is related to the referendum. A couple of weeks ago, we were in London at the Berlin Process Summit together with Minister Dimitrov, and it was a lovely experience. But among these discussions there, I have realized that 80% of the young people were in favor of stay option at the British referendum. Only 20% were for leave. And with the older generation, it was quite the opposite. 80% were for leave and 20% for remain. And this generational gap makes a deep cleavage in the British society. This is what I really like Britain. I lived there for a year, and I can see that cleavage still present in the society. I think this is the most important task of young people in Macedonia for this referendum. We should not leave this cleavage to stay and to be present here, which means that the young people should not only go out and vote on this referendum, but they must convince their parents and grandparents that this is important for them, that this is vote for the young people. So you should address your parents and grandparents, telling them, you go out and vote for me, for my future, and for a brighter and more secure future of us, the younger generations and the country.
I would like to stress out the legal framework on the law on the corruption and for the protection of the whistleblowers. That is a huge step forward in the accordance with the European legal framework. And of course, there are the three main legal acts: the law on primary education, secondary, and higher education. Maybe I will address the Comprehensive Education Strategy 2018 and 2025 as well, which was adopted this year. And I'm personally very curious to see how it will be addressed and implemented in the following years. And maybe through the scope and of work and our line of work from Youth Educational Forum, one of the major reforms that we would like to see is the student representation and participation. So if we would like to have active citizens who will take part in different roles of the society in different layers, maybe we should start from primary education and further develop these European values and democratic principles in the secondary education as well, so that in the future these citizens could take part in all of the different important processes.
My favorite self-motivating motto in these last several years has been "Can I be there?", which is sort of loosely translated, people make it. And the first time I thought of it was students when they organized themselves and made a difference. And that was the initial catalyst that made this new phase of the more mature Macedonia possible. So I want to say thank you to the students. It started with the young. This whole possibility we have is because of them. And this, also for me as a citizen of this country, is also, you know, a reassurance. I think we will make it. Second, the brain drain. All things, yes, we can. Change is possible. All things considered, it is easier to find Europe in Germany or in the Netherlands. But it's much more fulfilling to make Macedonia European. And what kind of a generation we will be if we don't do our best to make that happen. And last point, a few days ago we marked the birthday of Nelson Mandela. And one of my favorite quotes of his is, "It always seems impossible until it's done. And no one else will do this but us. And we're going to make this happen." The reason why in London the summit was mentioned, Macedonia was mostly talked about as a beacon of hope. I got a question, how do you feel with the burden of being the only country that represents a hope for a real democracy in the Balkans? This is a question I got from someone who was, I don't know, maybe Serbia, maybe another country. We did this, and it started with the students, with the young. So let's do this. Thank you.